Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Yep. I have a question regarding exam.net usage. I have explored it and I have found that we can only use it for one type of questions, that's essay type questions. So how you do then in that case?
No, so I've created a question paper. Let's say it has MCQs, it has maybe some short answer questions. It's exactly like how I would create an end of semester paper with images, and I upload the PDF. So the students look at the PDF as the question paper and they can answer separately as they view the question paper.
Okay. So ultimately they answer in pen and paper or on a doc?
No, they type.
Okay.
They type, yeah.
Percy,
Okay. Yep.
International School of Talent, and the kids, it has a split screen, so they see the test at the top half and they enter at the bottom. But you can put any kind of question you want at the top with any kind of diagrams. With it, it also allows you to use any mathematical graphing programs, so that's integrated into the platform. So that can be helpful if you're having to have them graph. It's already integrated.
Thanks, Tracy. What about Goformative? Because we have been using Goformative and it has all these types of options, and we have found it quite supporting as well, apart from last 2 days where their servers are creating a bit of issues. Otherwise, we have been using Goformative. So anybody of you have tried or got this some issues and changed to this platform?
Yes, I would like to add to that Goformative. It's mostly paid, and the type of questions that you can upload over there are just the essay type questions. Like for example, for us science subjects, you need to put up images and all. For that, it's a paid service. So that way, I didn't find Goformative very helpful.
No. It's available. It's in the free. Yes, I agree. In paid, it has some extra options, but we do get the options of uploading the image and video even free. You can try and explore.
Okay. And last time I tried, it didn't happen. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello. I'm Rana Naamani. I've been using Microsoft Forms, which is found on Microsoft for those who have an email on Microsoft. It's really very good. You can upload images. The students can answer as a text, as a multiple choice, as even they can also upload a file. What I used to do is that when some of my students had to upload a graph, for example, or something that has to be written, they were taking pictures of their work and uploading them as a file to the question. So they can upload a file directly to the question. So I advise you to use Microsoft Forms. It's for free and it's really good. And something very similar to it is Google Forms. It's also for free and have a lot of free features. It also has certain mathematical equations that could be helpful if you have anything like in physics.
Can I ask a question about exam.net for those of you who must have used it? If you are putting up a diagram, are you able to label it and annotate it?
No, you can't do that. But when you put a diagram, I basically put letters on my diagram like A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the student annotates it by just typing out those answers. I mean, that's how I've worked around it.
Okay, so I just wanted to add to that. I use Peer Deck for this, Neopod and Peer Deck. It helps, especially in formatives, if you want to annotate a diagram or identify structures within a diagram. This ABCD format, it works because students are able to drag and drop and identify specific areas of a diagram. So Neopod and Peer Deck, they are integrated with Google Slides. So it becomes very convenient to use it, and students get immediate feedback also. Is there anybody else who's using any similar platform?
Yeah, hi. I have also used Google Forms. I was able to embed it into Manpack with links straight into my grading.
Mr. Good, how are you?
Sorry, did anyone have, did you want to continue with that? Can everyone hear me still? So far we've talked about Goformative, Pear Deck, Nearpod, Microsoft quizzes, using exam.net. Has anyone tried anything beyond just assessing through tests and quizzes for Criterion A or any other criteria at this point?
Yeah, actually, hi.
Hi.
Yeah, my name is Nidhi.
Hi, Nidhi. What have you been doing?
So basically, since we are, the challenge for me, moreover, is because my school is a candidate school and it is new to IB also. So per se, students have come from all different curriculums. So and soon, like within 6-7 months, the school shut down because of the lockdown. So I was doing a unit on integrated science on the unit of chemistry. So I wanted to assess them on criterion A. However, I had already done Google Forms before, and I had done criterion D. So what criterion D also I did step by step during my virtual class. When I gave them the article, which I wanted them to assess the article and write the summary on that article, and implications of that article. It was about how science is solving the problem of pollution using carbon particles. So I made them first annotate the article during my class hour on Zoom. So they shared the screen with me, and the first step, when they made the mind map, that mind map through a normal mind map maker, I shared the link with them. They made the mind map. So first step was done that way. Then second step, I gave them 1 day's time to actually find out the meanings of the words that they do not know. And that way I got the second step, that they were doing research well. Then third step, I made them write down a layout of what they would want to include in their article, in their summative essay. So that took around a couple of days, because a lot of things they were sending me, and I used to try to do it during the school timings. So that way I did not want them to actually just sit and research blatantly. I wanted them to give immediate feedback in case they are going somewhere wrong. And finally, once I got their blueprint ready, during class hour, actually I gave them one class to make a template. Fifth class or sixth class, they finish in 2 classes in my online class. They wrote it on Word, shared the screen with me, and finally they submitted the article to me. And that's how I graded them on criterion D. But however, for criterion A, I have been taking a lot of presentations, giving them topics and taking a lot of presentations, making them make sometimes simplified notes. Sometimes I'm asking them to present a topic, and Google Forms, but I'm not able to. I want to take a proper test. But yeah, I think exam.net might work for me. So I will try that. And for my labs, I've been using Bioman and PHET labs. Those are the only thing that I've been using. So I'm trying to seek more clarity so that I can, since the students are so new, I have to go step by step towards each assessment. So even making a mind map becomes a formative for me. Even annotating the article becomes a formative for me.
Yeah, I think formative assessment has become even more significant in this environment because we need all that feedback that we can get to kind of gauge how things are going. And we can't necessarily rely on the traditional assessments that we've been doing in the classroom in this type of environment. I think when we are designing our kind of more summative assessments for this criterion, we have to start to think about the type of questioning that we're asking our students to do that will allow us to see their thinking as opposed to just easily look up the answer to a question, right? So has anyone adapted sort of the type of tasks that they've asked their students to do in that way? Yeah, go ahead. I can see your hand up there.
Okay. May I, Tracy? Okay. So with grade 6, when I teach them about cell, different structure of the cell and the cell organelles, what I do is I first make them compare it with a principal, with a school or a farm, so that they see the function and the structure, the analogy they understand. After that, I tell them to do an edible cell model. uh, I put them into groups. Right now, it is not possible with the remote learning, but this is what I do. For instead of having a paper pen test, I make them work in groups, and they make the model, edible model of a cell. After that, they are given a sheet wherein they have to fill in the cell organelles, the uh, food particle that they have used in their edible cell model, which resembles, which shows that particular cell organelle, and write the function of it. At the same time, then I give them other questions also, like suppose if you mitochondria, looking at the function of the mitochondria, where in the body do you think this particular cell organelle will be most? So they have to think about it, analyze about it, the function, and relate it, and then give a particular answer. So it would be a muscle cell. So there is a series of questions also that that the students have to answer. And then there is one raft activity which I share with them. So I tell them that if you are the president, if you want to stand as a president in your class, okay, and you are a particular specialized cell, then you write a speech about your function and why the other cell bodies should elect you as the president. So if it is a red blood cell, then the red blood cells that I am very important, I carry oxygen and all that, and then you come to know whether the students have understood about the functions each specialized cell does, you know. So instead of giving a question answer type of paper for criteria A, I give such a type of project where there is collaborative, social skills are also seen, okay, when they are sitting together and trying to make the edible cell model, because they have to plan first as a group, and then they have to answer those questions also which are related to the cell, and then do the raft activity. So I think then it covers all the strands of the uh, at least a few strands of the criteria A.
That's awesome. I really like the idea of using performance-based tasks in this online environment. Like you said, I think it definitely covers some of the strands in Criterion A, if not all of them. And it really also speaks to those higher level thinking skills that we see in Bloom's taxonomy. So I think performance-based tasks are a great option for us here in the online environment to assess most of the criteria that we're doing in science.
Jenny commented, and that's what I raised my hand earlier for. I've been actually doing labs at home in my kitchen, which is right behind us. The kids will get the focus of what the lab is ahead of time. I tell them what supplies I have. They haven't been doing it in each of their homes because the way our students are, they have been spread out. Some of them have gone off to summer homes. They don't necessarily have access to the same materials as everyone else does. I sort of raided the school for a whole bunch of chemical supplies right before I left, brought a lot of stuff home on the tram. Luckily, I'm allowed to do that. And I have them, they've gone over, we've talked about what we're talking about, and then can they tell me how they would like me to design the experiment, and I do it in front of them. They either use the chat function on the side, or they can orally speak around, and they're telling me how to do the lab, how to change it to get to the different aspects, and then we have an open forum discussion. It's as opposed to them having the materials out in front of them and working at the lab table to solve it. They're now working as a larger group, not as great, but they're still working on designing it. And it's interesting because I'll set stuff up and they're like, could you move to the left? Could you hold this up? No, let's add more of this. Let's speed up the reaction this way. Let's slow it down. we did certain things, just even with the titration. I said, okay, let's just sit there. Let's go through what I have in the household under the kitchen sink, and we're going to find out what everything is. How would I know to titrate this or to titrate that? And it's a way to do the objectives B. It's not perfect, but it's a start.
I really like that. And I like your last point at the end, like, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. I think in this online environment, we have to be adaptable. We have to be flexible. Maybe we're not going to get the perfect criteria B and the criteria C lab. But if kids are able to do some of the features of design, maybe collect a little bit of data, evaluate some of that, I don't think that we necessarily have to expect these perfect full-on design labs that we might normally do in our schools. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have been doing, sorry, I'm Tracy from Switzerland. We've been doing a complete free choice. I'm not sure, I'm new to the MYP since it's changed to this curriculum. So my apologies if this is not the right thing to do. But we basically gave the children a complete choice of what experiment they like to do. We obviously gave them a list of suggestions of things that are easy equipment at home. And I just wanted them to write a full lab, and they did a great job on it. I'm really happy with them. It's just, I feel like at the time, I'm not sure if we're meant to just carry on as normal and teach the planned curriculum, or if we can totally just use this opportunity to go project-based learning and just complete free choice of labs. Like, does it have to be centered around an actual topic? But I'd be interested to get other people's feedback on that.
Hi, if I can come in on that. I have tried simulations at home using whatever possibly they can get from the kitchen, for instance, pulses of different kinds, and work with those and have data to be collected. So especially with the outbreak of the COVID-19, they have actually had a very good chance to collect data from how outbreaks can actually take place. And those have really worked out quite well with students for data collection. So Criterion C has quite well been taken care of in that sense. Also, Google Slides, I think, is a very good option. You can have a collaborative learning happening in the class, and at the same time, you can have each individual child working on their own part of the question or part of the project. And then once it's put together, it's notes for them to be used as a class together. So I think that Google Slides works quite well with this as an option as well.
I'd like to say something about formatives. The way that our school is set up, we kind of grade formatives on a whole. And I always thought that that was too much to bite off for the kids because it ends up looking like another summative. So I've really enjoyed being at home and able to take a step back and really break up the strands and teach each one specifically. So right now my 9th grade bio group is working on ecology, which works perfect. So I had seen something before we left from Cornell Lab from their bird unit, their ornithology group. And it was basically a magazine, digital magazine, put together by 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, where they each did their own lab and write up on birds. So I took that and I wanted to do that with my kids during the ecology unit before we left. But now that we've left, things have changed. So I've taken the opportunity. I've only worked on Criterion B right now, but each strand, I have given them information, practice, and then a formative. So now I'm grading each strand separately, which I think is working much better for the kids because I can give my feedback quicker and better, I think, than when it was a whole strand, a whole criterion. So there's also a platform called SciStarter, which is all about citizen science, and it's all about it's all the projects that are going on in the world right now where they need citizens to take data for them. So my plan is when I get there, when we come back from spring break, is everybody is going to pick their own ecology lab that they can do at home. Some of them are in apartments, some of them are in houses. So It's more of a choice as to what they can do, but it works on everything from, you know, collecting ants that come into your space, or collecting, I was planning on doing a beach cleanup and processing the plastics. We can't do that now, but I'm going to leave it open to them, and then they're going to take that project, write up the steps that they have to do for that project. They'll work on the project, and then they'll do the data analysis later, depending on where they are when we come back. So that's my plan. I'm kind of enjoying being able to step back than it was in the classroom, where it feels like you have to do so much all the time. I feel like I'm going much slower, but it's working much better.
Thank you so much for sharing that and bringing up citizen science. I think this is actually a great opportunity for kids if they're able to do a little bit of citizen science. There's so many apps on their phones too that are free that kids can use. I haven't heard of Sci Starter, but maybe you could put a link to that in the chat. There's also apps like iNaturalist, which I can share with you guys, where kids can, if they're allowed to go for a walk, they can just take pictures of the different organisms that they see, upload it to the program, and it identifies the species for them. There's also other apps on their phones. I hope you guys have all heard of Google Science Journal. There's also like the physics toolkit, where kids can be collecting data, acceleration data, data on sound, data on light, so that if you're doing any type of physics unit right now, there's plenty of opportunities for kids to be conducting these experiments at home and collecting data just with their phones.
I just wanted to also share something in addition to the discussion that we had about the labs. And I have also been trying to do a lot of, experiments with household items and rather alternatives to the equipment that we would use in the lab. So for instance, today I was doing extraction of DNA from a banana with my students, and I asked them, I just gave them a research question as to would something like a hand sanitizer or something like acetone, would it give effective results in DNA extraction? So I wasn't sure either. So I gave it to them as a research question. So they were trying to kind of see if they were good substitutes for isopropyl alcohol. So, so yeah, so again, I was able to do a formative criterion B with them by doing that.
Sounds awesome. DNA extraction, definitely an at-home experiment that you can do. Something else that I was thinking of maybe trying, there's this classic biology lab that we do where we get beets and cut them up into like little cubes and wash them. And then we can put the beets into different types of solutions and see which of those solutions will disrupt the cell membrane of the beet and allow the pigment, the red pigment inside the beet, to kind of spill out into the solution. So if you've ever done that lab before, one way you could modify it is to kind of give it some relevance by testing like soap, maybe hand sanitizer and water, and seeing how much that disrupts the cell membrane of the beet, and kind of connect that to how hand washing and hand sanitizers would disrupt the envelope of a virus. And that kind of might link a little bit to what's happening around the world right now. It would be pretty qualitative because we don't have colorimeters at home or spectrophotometers, but it might be an interesting investigation for the kids to do as well if they have access to kind of those household materials, or something that you could model for them and ask them for their predictions, etc.
I was looking at ecology, experiments related to ecology and environmental factors affecting soil, or because I was doing ESS with DP. So we were thinking about IAs and what all the students could do. So I just, because we don't have any probes or anything here at home, so I was looking at if there are any apps that could, help me to detect wind speed or I don't know. So I found a few apps on the App Store. So maybe a few apps also that can detect temperature and changes and all that. So instead of just wait for a thermometer, if you don't have, there are certain apps on the phone too which you could use, in order to detect the measure as a means of measurement tool.
anyone have any other thoughts on sort of this train of thought where we're talking about labs, criterion B and C?
Sorry,
Yes, I just popped in now. So I don't know what was the discussion happened. So I have one suggestion about osmosis, the effect of osmosis in potato and all that. Those are the labs which the kids can do at home, because I hope they do have a measuring weighing scale at home because of these things, cooking and all that. So even they can do those activities, even the cell membrane related those stuff, where they can actually see the extraction of DNA is very good. And as Ashika ma'am just now suggested about the soil testing, the temperature and all that, pH meter, they can happily make a pH paper at home, and they can measure the pH, right? So that also one qualitative experiment they can do at home because of the present scenario. So these are few suggestions which I was suggesting to my kids. Okay, I hope. I have something to add. I used to teach MYP 1 a unit about ecology. I used to work in a virtual lab at a site called glencoe.com. I think it was interesting for the students. They can test the effect of temperature, of water temperature, on the breathing rate of for the fish, for 3 types of fish, and they extract information from this experiment, and then they draw their own graph. They take a photo for their graph and then send it by email. So it was a very interesting site. I will write the site for you on the WhatsApp group. I think it's interesting. So you can try this for Criterion C. They can collect the data from a virtual lab.
Definitely, yeah. I put a ton of links to virtual labs and simulations in the Google Doc that goes with this meeting. I shared it in the chat. So I put as many as I could possibly find online. If you don't want to do at-home experiments, virtual labs and sims are great ways to collect data. Maybe we can kind of move a little bit away from B and C now, because there were some other questions in the Google Doc people wanted to talk about. One was on criterion D. Has anyone been doing any case studies that they might want to share about? That was the question. How can we address criterion D by using case studies? Does anyone want to speak about that? Has anyone done anything?
I have done a case study on sickle cell anemia with my students. So there was a case study which was there in the national government website. So I asked them to go there and to find out some information based on the case studies, and to compare with the other countries. Compared to Africa, Africa is the country which is more prone to malaria, and they are heterozygotes for the sickle cell anemia. So I asked my students to work on that.
That's
Yes.
awesome. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know how many of you all are on the WhatsApp groups for sciences, because I've shared a criteria D on bioterrorism, where I made different groups of students. Okay, now you can do it at home also, remotely also. So the students are given, each group of students is given a particular microorganism, because now we are in that situation where, you know, the virus is affecting everybody, and it's like a pandemic. So I had given, when I was teaching microorganisms and diseases to grade 8 students, I gave that particular task, wherein to each group I gave them a particular microorganism. So whether it was anthrax, or whether it was botulism, or Ebola virus. So there were 4 or 5 organisms that I gave to each group. And then I said, in each group, there will be one microbiologist, there will be one doctor, physician, there will be one administrator of the city, there will be one cartographer, and there will be a microbiologist. So, and each one had a role, and they had a few questions that they had to answer, find out about that particular organism. And they were given a fictional place, and I said that this is this place, a city which has these many population. So there is going to be a bioterrorist attack because of using this particular bioweapon. So then as a microbiologist, as a group, how will you explain the disaster management thing, or what are the about that particular virus, whether if it is a microbiologist, then what kind of bacteria or virus is it, how much time does the bacteria or virus take to infect the particular person, what is the gestation period or whatever the cycle of that particular microorganism. And then the cartographer had to make the drawing of that city, and then they had to decide which are the places which will be isolated, which are the places which will be which will be crowded, so people should not go there. So when I had 4 different microorganisms, first I told all the cartographers to come together, all the microbiologists to come together, all the doctors, physicians to come together and work on that question that I had given for their own organism. Then think about what all are you looking at as a group, and then they could go. Then they would go to their own microorganism group and then come up with the presentation. And after their presentation was ready, they had to present it to the city council, which was a group of teachers. I had my science teachers there, and then the rubric was given, and the teachers graded the students based on their presentation and the report that they wrote. So that was what I had done. So it was a jigsaw activity where you could see collaboration and then also research skills, because each one would have a definite set of questions, and they would use different, and then different websites were also given to them, and they could look at the answers and then do that particular task.
Awesome. I've also included in the Google Doc a link to the National Center for Case Study Teaching in Science, which would already have a lot of prepared case studies that you guys could use as potential Criterion D or even for Criterion A assessments and instruction as well. So there's lots of stuff already out there. Lenny's just posting in the chat that the CDC has a lot of lessons and resources as well. Anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, so I actually, the task that Miss Ashika just shared, she had shared the task with me last year, and I also did this, the same task rather with my students. We did this earlier this year, but one of the things that we do in Criterion D is reflecting on the impacts of science with the different factors. So I also saw an opportunity for an extension to this task in the form of service. So what my students are currently doing is they are reflecting on the social impact of such a pandemic, and they are planning to conduct a sharing circle, online sharing circle for the school community to come together and also share how their social lives have been affected by a scientific problem. And they're going to facilitate, my students are going to facilitate this conversation, and they're developing some questions about, what are some positive ways to deal with a lockdown or a pandemic like this? How do you keep yourself physically and mentally healthy? What are some skills that people are learning in this time? So in addition, we also added this, we're also currently thinking of service opportunities alongside as an extension to the task that Ms. Ashika just described.
That's awesome. I think just because we're in a lockdown doesn't mean that we can't consider how we can give back to the community as well, right? And having students publish their work, maybe as public safety announcements or things like that, things that they've learned like that, can also be considered doing a service to the community, both locally and globally. So that's awesome. Go ahead.
Recently, I have done this activity which Lenny has published on her website about designing the 3D model of this coronavirus, representing the ATL skills. So as the students are at home, so we should work hard on the ATLs also, because the ATLs which are mentioned in the IB, now they had given, it's totally different because they're using more of online activity and all that. So collaboration and all that, we have to get into activity, and we have to try to implement those in our units. So I had worked on it, and I got a positive approach from the students designing this. They enjoyed using the online technology and all that. So that is also one very good task which was shared by Lenny. So I expect that, I hope that it may be interesting for you all also if you do it in your classrooms.
Awesome. I think maybe there was another burning question that we didn't really talk about yet in the Google Doc, and actually something that I'm also curious about. Are people still following their planned curriculum, or are we going with another model? Can anyone speak to what's happening in their subjects in terms of the planned curriculum, or if any changes have been made?
Okay, so we haven't changed much on our curriculum, so we're going as planned. However, we just made a few modifications on the tasks that we're gonna ask the kids to do. So we have an IDU unit with drama, and what they were going to do, they were going to do a shadow performance in which they're going to manipulate where they were going to be in order to change the size of the shadow and so on. But of course, according with what's going on right now, we can't do that. So we decided to modify their outcome so that it's more individual. And that they would like make a puppet shadow performance, and they would apply the same concepts that they're going to learn in science, like how the light behaves and what factors affect the size of a shadow. They're also going to do something with how we manipulate sound and frequency, so that they can make their own sound effects using materials from their own environment. So we just modified their outcome to just a smaller scale, so that they are able to do it.
Great, thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to speak to that at all? Anyone having any struggles sticking with their curriculum? Or anyone leveraging this opportunity to do something new and different? No? Well, I guess I can speak a little bit to that, what we're doing at WAB. Basically, I teach grade 9 science, and we have definitely changed our curriculum. We were going to do a completely different chemistry unit as to what we are planning now. But as I mentioned, we're now starting with a little module on chemistry of the coronavirus. So we're going to be teaching the kids about how membranes work, the different hydrophilic and hydrophobic properties of membranes, how soap disrupts those membranes. Yeah, so we've completely changed our curriculum to make it more topical, relevant, and to adapt it to our circumstances. And I think that's okay. I think as teachers, sometimes we just have to let go that we're not going to be able to cover it all. And, you know, the kids are going to be okay if they didn't learn how to name ionic compounds in grade 9. It's really not the end of the world. They'll get it later on if they need it. So yeah, we are definitely leveraging this opportunity to get creative, make it topical, make it relevant, make it interesting, and also try to find opportunities for students to publish some of their stuff that they're working on, rather than it just be work, make it actually useful for society, so they can teach other people around them how to be responsible during this pandemic. So yeah, we've definitely leveraged this opportunity to do that at WAB anyways. I know the math teachers have also been using this opportunity to do a lot about, I don't know much math terminology, sorry, but like logarithmic versus exponential patterns and that kind of stuff, using the data from COVID-19. So it's been really interesting to see the creativity of the different teachers in our different departments.
I have a question. I teach level 4 and level 5, 9th and 10th grade students. And I also do teach the math. So I have been using a whole bunch of the graphs and doing that. And that's actually been really easy to do, especially with the 10th grade, to do that. My concern is for those of you who are also teaching in the 10, obviously the curriculum, we can't do all the same stuff, but yet I'm worried about the gaps that they're going to have. Last year, my MYP 5s for going into the DP. And I have, so far my solution is that, so not to overwhelm them because they have a lot going on. It's also very stressful. I spend 5 minutes of the Zoom session listening to why they hate their lives because they're stuck inside and when is this going to end. To give them some extra work outside just for those in the 5, to try to get them to still do extra practice so that they are not behind next year in the DP. level. Is anyone else having some ideas of what to do for those that are at MYP 5 going on to DP, and what we do, because we cannot cover in detail as much as we did, and there's going to be some gaps.
So what topic are you looking? What topics are you looking at? And is it integrated sciences, or are you doing discrete sciences? How are you doing it?
We are not integrated sciences. So in this specific question, I'm going, basically, I'm more concerned in the chemistry. I'm trying to cover it. I'm actually overlapping some of this stuff going into both the, let's try in the math classes. I'm doing actually practical problems in both the chemistry and the physics to try to get them in a different time practicing the same thing that would have been taught in their chemistry class or in their physics class. These are for the DP5. So we're talking about the physical sciences, but ours are all taught individually, because we still also have to meet our country's curriculum requirements, which does not allow it to be integrated.
Oh, okay, okay.
That is a tricky topic, or a tricky question. Does anyone have any help for Tracy Ann?
So, do you do backward planning, like from DP to MYP, like what is happening, so that on which topics to focus, and you can take those topics instead of teaching them, instead of seeing the length of the unit, we can get into the breadth, so that it will be useful for them when the students go to DP? It's just a suggestion.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I'm just trying to like sit there and I'm trying to keep very accurate notes so that for next year that obviously that everybody remembers this is where it fell in the curriculum and this is what happened, and just reminders of this. But I just didn't know if anybody had some external projects that they were assigning.
Okay. Do you know about the IGCSE? So the IGCSE, Cambridge board, okay, CAIE. So the Cambridge board has, with the MYP, it is a problem because we are working on concepts and we don't give so much importance to content. But when you go from MYP to DP, you have a lot of content in sciences, because I teach biology. And now I'm teaching ESS to my DP1 students. So I feel that there is a lot of content that the students should not miss, because we are doing only concepts. So what I also do in parallelly with my concepts and my assessments and the methodologies of MYP, I also look at the syllabus of the IGCSE. The IGCSE has specific syllabus for physics, chemistry, and biology.
No, I have been doing that for both the physics and the chemistry to try to, and it also is in Estonia, we have a very rigid, more IGCSE type curriculum than the IB. So I have to actually supplement it anyway. But yeah. I think the person, Fish, had mentioned that they're cutting stuff out of the curriculum to make it short because there's something that you can't do. My question, I guess, was, does anyone have suggestions if you were trimming down the curriculum and sort of things? What are you offering for your fifth year students so that they still have that opportunity? Is anybody doing that? Any suggestions? I'm just trying to give them supplemental work that, hi, please do this on your own because you will need it, and otherwise next year is going to be hell. I keep saying that, like, you need to actually focus on it. We unfortunately can't do that because of limitations. I cannot go through, I can talk to you about Le Chatier's principle. I can talk to you about, we can do online videos, we can do stuff like that, but there's a whole section that I'm not going to do on Zoom. I mean, it's just not really practical for them to do it so much in their stuff, and yet I'm afraid that they're going to be behind.
Tracy Ann, have you ever heard of a platform called Education Perfect? You should look that up. That's what we're using. They've been generous enough to give it to us for free during this time. Education Perfect is basically a platform it has all the Australian curriculum in it, but you should be able to find the modules for the units that you need your students to cover. And it's basically an asynchronous online learning platform with beautifully designed interactive presentations with embedded formative assessment right in it. It's such an amazing platform. So you could very easily differentiate and say, okay, you guys who are going to be taking DP Chem next year, you need to do this module, this module, this module. They can do it on their own time. You can go in and you can check who did what. The data and analytics is phenomenal. You can give them oral feedback. You can just click, yeah, 4 out of 5 stars if you don't have time to be going through and giving everyone individualized feedback. It's been a lifesaver for us at WAB in our science department. Really highly recommend you check that out. Don't reinvent the wheel. Somebody already made these lessons. You don't need to go and do it yourself. Your job, or all of our jobs right now, is to be focusing on feedback and supporting our kids through this, and not like, let's make extra work for ourselves and make slideshows and videos and all this stuff. It's already out there.
Can you repeat the platform again?
Yes, and I will also put it in the chat and in the Google Doc. It's called Education Perfect.
We are using also the same platform. Yeah.
I have a suggestion regarding this completion of curriculum. If we just give students, like, instead of saying like your life is going to be hell, this is coming up in DP1, instead of that, if we can just tell them like, what are the modules you feel you are interested, just give them a list of modules which you feel like are important and can be covered by the students. Just give a list to them, ask them what they are interested in, and students can pick and choose from that list, and that's how they can collaboratively, like one student can go into like details of, let's say, DNA. I'm interested in understanding how and the structure of DNA and what are the implications of genetic engineering, and maybe the other student might be interested in some other topic. So that's how they can collect their resources, do their own research, and then do presentation. So that will also reduce the load on the teachers. The students are working actively to find out information, and then also having sharing it collaboratively on an online platform. That's my suggestion for it.
Thank you. Do we have any other suggestions or comments for Tracy Ann about this, or do we want to talk about something else in our last little bit?
Hi.
Hi.
Actually, I have a doubt that since, as I already said, that my students are new to MYP. So I started this, this is grade 7 I'm talking about, and we are doing integrated science. So I started with the unit of cells, was able to do a good summative. I did the unit of energy, I was able to do a good summative. And then I started the unit on chemistry, and I'm presently doing the periodic table, which I am teaching them, and we are doing tasks and all of it. When I had initially started the joint, when I had started grade 7, my 4th unit was ecology, and I had anticipated that I'm going to cover it. However, last week I got my MYP coordinator told me that I must trim it down. So if I start ecology unit, and she wants us to do our assessment by 27th April. So now this ecology, now I'm presently in periodic table. So this ecology unit is going to happen, and I'll not do if I start teaching the content per se, like it will become very monotonous, and I will not be able to do a good summative at all, even if it is designing a terrarium. Because if they are learning for the first time, I need to scaffold them also to an extent that they can understand. Now, when I'm trimming the entire unit, if I'm not teaching the entire unit, by the time they come to grade 8, like if this is all they know in science, because some of them have not done grade 6 before in their life. Some of them have never done science. So I am feeling very challenged at this moment, because in grade 8 also, I will be their teacher. And by 9th, we are going to bifurcate the science, physics, chemistry, bio. With the kind of knowledge they have as of now, it's going to be very, very difficult for them. But even if I tell them, I give them a list of topics, and they are new to MYP, so a lot of skill development I have to do. Even for the matter of giving them presentations, even if I ask them, you design a questionnaire. For my formative, I ask them to design a questionnaire on their own. So I'm very doubtful that if I trim a unit, what will I be able to do later? Like, and if, or let's say even if I start ecology just because I want to do the content of it, if I'm not able to do a summative, and if I'm not even getting 15 hours to do my particular unit, will that be even considered a unit in this present scenario?
I don't know. That's a really tricky situation that you're in.
I feel like according to MYP, all the criterion strands has to be assessed twice per semester, right? Twice per semester. If you're going for 2 semesters, you have to assess. So you just see to it that is the strands being assessed. In case if the strands are assessed, then you can only focus on teaching the unit instead of focusing on the summative to them. Because if you say in grade 8 and grade 7, you're going to be the teacher to them, grade 8, and again you have to come up anyways. When you come get them in grade 8, you can just link whatever is missed in grade 7 to them and go ahead, because that is now the scenario which we all are facing right now.
I think maybe the question which you are trying to address are like manifold things to it. Like I feel like you're focusing more on the content right now when you're saying I want to do ecology and I want to do periodic table. Instead of that, if you look at the overall statement, so what's your statement of inquiry? You can be try being creative, and you can have inputs from your other teachers about how do you include the topics which are coming under periodic table also, under ecology also. I did once this type of unit when I was with grade 6. With grade 6, I did which was addressing the ecology concepts and also addressing the chemistry concept of periodic table, elements, compounds, and mixture also. So we did something related with composting, and we said what are the biodegradable substances, what are the non-biodegradable substances. So that way I was able to cover the ecological concepts also, and I was able to cover some of the chemistry concepts, which was like a basic need. But yes, your question regarding the time limit, yes, that is something which we need to address. And again, you can use jigsaw technique, you can use some of the visible thinking routines, so that you empower your students to do more work in less time. So instead of focusing on so much content and how do I finish it, look at what are the concepts you want to address. Think about what the students already know and what they already can do. Just try to cash in on those things rather than trying to, like as Julia, somebody said, like instead of reinventing the whole wheel, just focus on what is available and work with that and continue with your unit. I hope that helps.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think we're just about at the end of time. We just have a couple minutes left. I think basically what came out of that last little bit is that as MYP teachers, maybe this is our opportunity to really just, instead of trying to prep the kids with the content that they're going to need and force them into doing a million summatives in the last few weeks of school, that we focus on our ATLs and building the skills that are going to help them no matter what course that they're taking in the DP, whether it's chemistry, biology, physics, etc. And yeah, I think that's probably one of the most important things that we can do as teachers in this environment right now, is just focusing on our ATLs, focusing on our concepts, and trying to stop doing offline school online, because it's just not going to work that way. Does anyone have any last thoughts or anything that
thought on syllabus? When we make a SOI for MYP sciences, whenever we're doing a unit, the SOI and the summative get interlinked. You make your summative with it. So after you get your SOI and your factual questions, your questions are in place. Then after that, you actually have your summative in place. So I'm sure when the unit was designed, now that we have backward planning, we do have a summative, or we do have that final end in our heads, so that summative must be planned that way. I mean, the reason why there is confusion regarding when should the summative be or why should the summative be, it should be there in the beginning with the SOI being defined, So in the beginning, when you define your unit, the SOI and the summative should have been defined, because that's a culmination of the unit that you're looking at with the help of that SOI.
Yeah.
So I guess that summative should have been planned with the rest of it, when the SOI was planned, and the debatable questions and the factual questions to be answered in the curriculum planning were planned.
course. Yeah, definitely. All right, everyone, that brings us to our hour. Thank you so much for joining. I will make this recording available in the Google Doc and as well as the chat so that you can go back and have a look if you missed any of the resources that were provided. I also created a Google folder with tons more resources that I'll share with everybody. Thank you so much for coming. It was great to hear all your ideas and make some connections. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.